Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Here we go. Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology with technical difficulties. Everyone, hey, welcome into the Computer America Show. I'm your host, Ben Crossman. Everyone out there, I hope that you're doing well. Everything is, of course, the world's going crazy right now, but hey, we hope that you in particular are doing very, very well. So today on the program, we have a great show planned for you. Second part of the show, computer and technology news. With any time that we have left, we will, try to catch you up on tech news. And, it's honestly, it's so hard to find lately. It's everything is about, kind of the obvious. And it's, not a lot of companies are actually, kind of going out there and trying to make news. So it's really hard, but hey, we do our best. But in the first part of the program is dedicated to a guest. And today we have a great guest planned for you where we are going to be talking to the founder of the Sargon Dental and Implant Institute, as well as inventor of a brand new system for, keeping your teeth healthy. It's, this is something that obviously we have not covered in quite some time. We always have, let's say Sonicare or Oral-B or, the toothbrush manufacturers and how they're utilizing technology. And I feel like this is going to be something of great interest to a lot of people. And hey, it's just going to be interesting in general. So really looking forward to today's interview. So we're going to get to that in just a moment. Before we do, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including a link to our guest website, any articles that we discuss, anything that we talk about. Computeramerica.com. After the show airs, we'll have it all right there for you. Also, while you're there, check out some of our recent articles, reviews, other shows, past shows, future shows, podcasts, and more, all that computeramerica.com. So I think, and hey, find us on social media, blah, blah, blah. I think that's about it. We're going to go ahead and, start with today's guest. And as I said before, Sargon Dental and Implant Institute, none other than Dr. Sargon Lazarof himself. And he is, of course, a cosmetic dentist and the founder, as well as inventor. And we are really looking forward to talking to him about, what he has invented here. So everyone, let's go ahead and take him off mute. So let's see, unmute all. There we go. And Doctor, how you doing? Welcome on to the Computer America Show.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really happy that you could join us. This is, as I said, a little bit out of our comfort zone, but at the same time, hey, everyone has teeth. This is going to be of great interest to to a lot of people. So before we get started, let's get a little bit of background on yourself, on, of course, the Sargon Dental and Implant Institute, and just hey, what is your background?
I'm a graduate of USC School of Dentistry, 1986. A past professor, clinical professor. In 96, I became a professor and started an implant institute. 30 years ago, I started working on a new way of replacing teeth, which received its FDA approval as being the first and only immediate tooth replacement system. And 2 years ago, we started teaching it to other dentists, and glad to say that we have over 200 centers that are certified in this system.
Very impressive. And of course, we're going to be talking in depth about that. Let's go ahead and start off, and so much to cover here, but I think we're going to start off with the problem. And obviously, everyone has teeth, and I mean, dentistry has been practiced for thousands of years. People have always wanted replacement teeth, or a better smile, or just other kind of cosmetic fixes. But let's talk about replacing teeth in particular. What has been the challenge that, hey, I hate to use the phrase, but it's 2020. You think that we would have had this, kind of nailed by now, for years and years and years. What was the challenge for you coming up with a system to replace teeth?
When I started 30 years ago, the state of art was bridges. If you lost a tooth, we would have to shave healthy teeth on the two sides of the missing tooth and put bridges.
Hmm.
And that ended up a few years later, it would damage the teeth that were holding that space. And later on, you'd have to take out those teeth and give a bigger bridge. And you were on your way to a partial denture and a full denture. And everyone usually would end up in full dentures in their 60s and 70s. So then came the dental implants. Dental implants were introduced to North America in 1980s, in mid 80s, and basically at that time and still, what is being done is that if the tooth needed replacing, you had to take a tooth out, and when you take a tooth out, that gum and bone that is around the tooth, if you smile and look at yourself, you see that halo of gum around the tooth, all
Hmm.
of that shrinks. So now what you have to do is go have specialty surgeries if you wanted to replace that tooth in the front area, which cosmetic. You'd have to do gum grafting, bone grafting, and then each of these surgeries are separate. And then if those go well, then you put a screw in there, and you have to wait 6 months for that screw, for bone to heal on that screw. Then you do another surgery, uncover this thing, and if everything goes well, you eventually get a tooth on that. And that's the unfortunate state of art, current state of art. What I started working 30 years ago was the idea of why wait, and why, when we take a tooth out, not be able to replace it with something right away in that socket, so we can maintain all the gum and bone. So the patient doesn't have to go back and pay for that gum and bone, bring it back.
Hmm.
So I invented a system, it's called the Ultratooth. And Ultratooth is the same, uses the same titanium material, but instead of being a screw, it's an expandable screw. In other words, it's just like a molly bolt that you put in the wall.
Hmm.
Um, it's specifically designed for the job when it goes in. Once the tooth is extracted, taken out, you put this and expand it in that socket, and it put a tooth on it right away. So the patient can walk out smiling and chewing an hour later, and all that gum and bone that is there is all being maintained. So what we can do with patients is basically they come in with bad teeth, a tooth that is hurting, a tooth or several teeth, and within an hour or hours, if they're all their teeth, they can walk out smiling and chewing with brand new teeth.
That is certainly incredible, and actually, funny enough, I actually took a family member to the dentist to, actually talk about this exact thing that you were talking about with bridges and implants and that kind of thing. And it was so spot on, and all of them seemed just so unattractive. But then Ultratooth, and again, that is the system that you invented. What and I ask this whenever companies or people come on with inventions that are really looking to shake up their respective industries. What was the innovation? What was the change in normally technology? But what was the change in technology? What was the change? What was the change in dentistry? What allowed you to come up with a system that they didn't have before, or was this a completely just kind of a creative solution to a problem?
Well, it's a sea change and a problem. The entire implant industry uses screws, and screws typically, when they're placed, they need healing time. You need time for the bone to come grow into the threads and lock it in.
Hmm.
And what I introduced is an expandable screw, which has no healing time. So when you place it, it expands and makes contact with bone at the time of placement. So the patient can actually use it while the bone grows into it and heals. And the 30-year long-term results are astonishing because this is a device that has 30 years of history and clinical data behind it. I myself have been doing it for 30 years. And what's exciting is that because of the change in design, this is the only device that is, when it expands, it's wider at the bottom than top. We call it the Eiffel Tower effect. Typically, screws are cylindrical. So when they're placed, with time, they lose bone on top. All the companies that manufacture screws, they say zero point 0.2 millimeters of bone loss per year. In other words, 5 to 10 years later, patients smile and they start showing the threads of the screw, and they're very unsightly, especially if they're in the front area.
Hmm.
But this, because it's has that Eiffel Tower effect, the bone loss doesn't occur. So you look at cases where there's 10, 15, 20, 25 years later, they look as good as the day we placed them. So that typical bone loss doesn't occur. So it gives us a permanent solution for something that, dentistry and the patients have been dreaming about.
I'm trying to think of anything that would be prohibitive or kind of a step down from the industry standard. You mentioned that it looks great, decades down the road. That's awesome. What about cost? Is this more prohibitive, or because currently implants themselves, they're cost prohibitive as well. Would you say this is kind of on par, cheaper, more expensive than what is the standard?
It it always becomes cheaper. Now, typically implants in different areas, they cost as much as a bridge does.
Hmm.
A bridge is basically 3 crowns, and the price of 3 crowns, if you put them together, is the price of an implant. Now, different areas have their own pricing depending on their overhead and who's doing it, specialists and all that. But in the long term, it's always cheaper because the regular implants, what happens is that when you take it out, I told you that you lose that bone and gum and all that.
Hmm.
So when you take the price of a regular implant, all the other stuff is never mentioned. But once the process starts, you realize you have to pay for gum grafting, bone grafting, implant uncovering, and all of that. So this device saves you all those costs and the time of being in that chair, something that you typically get in, from 6 months, sometimes it takes to 14 months of a aesthetic case with several surgeries and several visits to the dentist. Now you can come out of the office in an hour having that the same cost, but saving all the additional costs.
Yeah, it's and like you said, I'm sure as this system kind of gets utilized by more and more places, the cost will come down. And I got to say that here in our notes we have a question about tooth loss is common past the age of 50. Is there someone who's an ideal candidate for this? Is there someone somewhere where you would recommend this over something else? Like who would you say is a good candidate for this Ultratooth?
Anyone that is losing or has lost a tooth is a candidate. Uh, the best time to do this procedure, obviously, is at the time of taking the tooth out, because at that time you can save the gum and bone. Now, if the tooth has already been taken out, up to a year you can still do it and
Mhm.
kind of form the gum around it. But as time goes, you start, the gum and bone starts shrinking more and more. And if you wait several years, then you have to have bone grafting to bring the bone back to do it. Now, medically, there are certain things that we have to watch out for, like obviously, like with any other surgeries, diabetics and smokers and all that. If it's diabetics, they have to control their sugar for this, healing time. And smokers, we highly advise them to stop smoking because in these categories, risk of failure is increased. But basically, anyone, I mean, even cases we have in our offices where we used to do root canals on
Mhm.
teeth to make them survive another 3 to 5 years. Now, if a tooth will not survive, 10 years, we advise the patient, let's just replace it and save you the cost of the root canal and the post and the crown and all of that stuff.
Very, very interesting because this seems like it would save, uh, or I should say, replace a number of different searches that um, you currently do. How many of these can let's say a person is missing, let's say, or needs to replace a tooth or two right next to each other, or is there any kind of limitation on the amount you can do, or is it just as long as you have a healthy jaw and healthy gums, you're good to go?
Typically we can do an entire arch in a single sitting.
Hmm.
So if a patient needs their entire mouth, we like to do it in two sittings. One day we do the upper arch, the other day we do the lower arch. And if it's a entire arch, we put them to sleep. It's a light sleep for 2 to 3 hours, and they wake up with a set of teeth in their mouth. But a single tooth typically takes, the surgery itself is about 10 to 15 minutes. The entire process takes about 45 minutes to an hour.
You're getting close to the drive-through, which is what I like to hear. So this is good. And of course, with for anyone out there watching the video portion, we're kind of showing the procedure, and there's a video out there you can watch as well. This is all very very informative. Now, you mentioned that people can walk out, they can smile, they can chew, within an hour of this implant. Obviously, this will get better over time. How long would you say? I don't want to say like a full recovery, but to the point where it's just another tooth. Like there's no pain, there's no sensitivity. It says here that you use a temporary crown until a full fledged crown can be made. What's the recovery time on this?
Okay. Typically, we give the patient pain medication for 2 to 3 days,
Hmm.
but most of the patients report that they go and have dinner the same day. Now, it is true while we've just placed the implant, the final healing has not occurred. Final healing is when the entire implant is filled with bone. That typically takes about 3 to 4 months, but the patient doesn't know the difference. The implant is solid in the jaw, and they're using it while that healing is going on.
Right.
So, as far as the temporary crowns, yes, it used to be, and we still sometimes put a temporary crown, and then when the lab makes the permanent crown, we replace it. But we do have the technology with the milling units and printing and all of that. We can actually give a final crown at the time of placement.
I gotcha. It's and of course with and we're gonna have this video playing in the background as kind of as we talk about this, but this seems really innovative, and I guess you have talked to you know other dentists and other practitioners. What are their reactions to this? Because obviously, you seem to think it's great, which is a great thing as someone who invented it. What are others in your industry saying about it?
So I spent the past. We started this company about 40 years ago. It's called Biodent, and 2 years ago we started the distribution. I started a lecture series throughout the United States, and what we were looking for is to have certain doctors that have good skills in implant dentistry to take them and actually certify them in the technique. So in the past 2 years, we have 200 certified centers. These are doctors that have gone through the course,
Hmm.
and they've shown enough cases to us for us to certify them in the system. So we have 200 centers throughout the United States. Now, doctors that have never heard about the system, you can call up your dentist and tell him, yeah, and, have you heard about Ultratooth? And if he hasn't heard about it, it's not gonna, sometimes we'll say no, or sometimes we'll say, well, the, traditional implants, let's go with them because they have, history behind it and all that. But
Right.
we've seen a lot of doctors do a bait and switch to, because if you call up a dentist and say, can you do immediate implants? What they'll tell you is yes. And when you go sit in the chair, they'll tell you, well, when we do immediate implants, we take a tooth out and we'll put a screw in, and I'm going to give you a small tooth, and you cannot chew on it. The minute you bite on it, it'll loosen up and fall out. So you have to sign these forms that, if it falls out, it's not our fault and all that. So it's extremely risky. So they say, well, let's not do that technique. Let's go with the traditional and let it heal, give it 6 months to heal now. So it's the only device that actually can do that is the Ultratooth. So if they're not trained in the Ultratooth, we've seen dentists that try to lead the patients towards more traditional techniques that they do.
Hmm.
The reason I'm on your show and we're going around and marketing this thing directly to the patients is we want to make the patients aware that it's no longer needed for them to go through all those unnecessary surgeries. We want a patient to go to their dentist and say, no, I want specifically the Ultratooth because the Ultratooth is the only device that has been cleared by the FDA for immediate full function. There's no other device that FDA has approved. And FDA required specific studies uh, that were necessary, and I submitted those years ago for its approval.
Yeah, and kind of while you're explaining that, the let's just say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and seeing that screw actually expand as you kind of turn the inner mechanism and expand out into the bone really, I guess, solidified it in my mind what it is that you've invented here. Very very unique, and I'm glad that 200 different centers are now operating on this, and of course there are a lot more centers that, like you said, I'm sure have still need to hear about it, but. Yeah, it really seems like you have something really innovative here. What would you say let's say a dentist, you mentioned a use case where a dentist is saying, oh, well, I haven't heard of it, so it's not worth hearing about or, paying attention to. Let's say you're talking directly to all the dentists out there and they're skeptical about your system. What would you say to them specifically?
Well, being skeptical was reasonable if I talked about this about 20, 25 years ago. And at that time, the dentist would always say that the traditional system has 25 years of history behind it and there's studies behind it that we know it works. But this system now, it has 30 years of information behind it. So there's no reason to worry about its efficacy. Now, the typical dentist, I want them to think about this.
Hmm.
Every time you take a tooth out of a patient, if you do not give them the option of an Ultratooth, think about what you're doing. You're allowing the area to heal and collapse. So I call that gingival gum mutilation, basically because the minute I allow that collapse of the gum and bone, then I'm requiring the patient to come back to me or a specialist and pay for that gum and bone to be brought back before an implant is placed. Whereas a dentist, with the skills of a taking tooth out, can take
Hmm.
this and place it in the same socket as you see in the diagram and expand it and put a tooth on it, temporary crown or a final crown if they have the technology, and save all that gum and bone that is going to be disappear. So not only it's best for the patient, economically, it's great for the dentist where you can address the patient's problem right now and you don't have to send the patient out. A lot of times the dentist refers the patient to a specialist to place the implants to do the gum grafting. This is something that every dentist that is qualified to take a tooth out is qualified to replace.
I completely understand, and it's yeah, very, very well said. So let's switch the conversation just a little bit. So Ultratooth and that whole system, I think we've covered that pretty well. Let's talk about just kind of dentistry in general over the past, since you've been practicing for the past 25,
Sure.
30 years. And we have a question in our notes here talking about, and I have no idea how this is going to relate, but artificial intelligence, robotics, although robotics and dentistry, I don't want to say like remote dentistry, but yeah, having robots do dentistry instead of, an actual person. That's something that I guess has been talked about for the past 10, 15 years at least. Talk about robotics, AI, that kind of thing. How do you see technology in general playing a role in dentistry going forward?
That's a very, very good question. Number one, there's actually a device that actually can be connected to the patient's head and will actually do the drilling.
Hmm.
So instead of the dentist doing drilling, that robotics can do the drilling precisely to placement. But with the advent of computers and digital dentistry, the beauty of this is that I can actually be in one city and do a surgery in another city. The way that can be done is that your information, digital information, the three-dimensional jaw scan, it can be sent to me, and I will place the device on that digital model, and the computer will give a guided surgical guide, where the surgical guide can go to any dentist and they install it inside your mouth, and they can actually close their eyes and drill those holes, and it will be precisely exactly where I placed it in the computer.
Hmm.
So regardless of how much experience that dentist has, he'll do it as well as I, because I designed it, and I put it, and we had the guide. So we have a lot of advances when it comes to that, and then also with impressions, digital impressions, and all that. I mean, the entire world of dentistry has really changed.
Yeah, and of course, for let's just say dental students who are, coming into the field, and I guess they're being trained on, what is the latest and kind of what's upcoming. Do you see that a dentist is going to be? I mean, with so many other areas when it comes to robotics and artificial intelligence, it's more of a hand in hand thing. It's not a replacement thing. I don't think that there will ever be a truly dentist free dentistry practice, but you'll be more of like a facilitator and someone who kind of looks over the equipment, makes up the plan, does that kind of thing. Do you see dentistry kind of going the way of kind of a specialized, I don't want to say overseer, but someone who manages these pieces of equipment, and then they also will do kind of gum checkups and things like that.
Absolutely. The technology is making things more precise, it allows for a lot less errors and much faster. So as I said, I could design this, and actually a robot can do the surgery.
Right.
So yeah, I do see dentistry going that direction. Absolutely.
And just because you're in the field, and I have to ask, every couple of years we hear a story about someone who's able to either A, regrow the tooth, B, have toothpaste that will help regrow enamel and things like that. Um, any kind of advancement that you can speak of when it comes to probably one of the most common questions you have, which is to kind of regrow teeth.
Yes, that's a good question, because I was at a uh, lecture panel, and one of the lecturers uh, showed the technology which you can take stem cells and put them in a socket and actually grow teeth. So the question I asked was that, well, okay, so with this technique of stem cells, the patient comes in with a broken tooth. What do you do? The the researcher said, well, we have to take the tooth out, take the blood, send it to the lab, isolate the stem cells. Stem cells will be sent to us, and we place them, and within a few months, a tooth grows. Now, the tooth that grows uh, will not match the color and will not be in the right position. So we
Mm.
always have to put a cap on that tooth. So the question I had was, okay, now this took several months to do, and then you have to put a crown on a tooth. Now that tooth is susceptible to decay, gum disease, and all the problems that regular teeth have. Now, this versus a technology that I introduced, whereby I can replace a tooth with a titanium device, which is stronger than a natural tooth. It will not decay, and it does not lose bone with time, and it has no affinity to bacteria. Bacteria cannot stick to it, give it gum disease. So, which one do you think the patient would choose? This one that they can get in 15 minutes and have no problems in the future, or the device that what you're saying? And the conclusion really was, when we're looking at it, this is the first time in human history that we are actually replacing a body part with something that is better that was there,
Hmm.
because the Ultratooth will not decay, but it doesn't have affinity for bacteria to attach to it. And as I said, the studies have shown, because of its design, doesn't lose bone with time. So we have cases, they come into our office that we did 30 years ago. They look as good as, we did them 30 years ago. So
And
even if
yeah.
that technology is brought to market, think about it. Which one would be, would patient go to, and which one would the patient go for?
It really does seem like people would be asking for two different solutions. The one with regrowing teeth and regrowing enamel. That would be kind of like a maintenance thing, and hopefully, people would never really need a tooth that, or need to replace a tooth that can otherwise be healthy. But hey, things happen. Either sudden impacts, trauma, genetics. Just sometimes people just roll bad genetics, and their teeth are just prone to problems. Then a solution like yours would definitely come into place. I'm sure
Well,
that,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Ultratooth is a tooth replacement system. We never give up on natural teeth. We always want to save teeth. Now, if we can, repair teeth, we
hmm
always want to save our own teeth. But these come in play anytime there is gum disease, accidents, decay, fractures. That when you're replacing a tooth, this is an option for tooth replacement.
I
But
gotcha.
it's never something that we give up on our natural teeth and then go for Ultratooth.
Yeah. So, and of course, with and I don't want to kind of turn this into just kind of dentist 101 PSA is about brush your teeth twice a day or three times a day, whatever it is now, and that kind of thing. But I do want to say that people who maybe haven't gone to the dentist in a while, and they do have some problems. Just since you've been practicing past 20 years, let's say, is it easier than ever to go to the dentist and get your teeth fixed? Because I think a lot of people, let's say they're hey, they have a tooth that's about to fall out. They think this is the biggest problem in the world, and it's going to be very, very complex to fix. What would you say to people who are afraid to go to the dentist or haven't been in a while, and are afraid that, hey, you can't fix their mouth?
Well, there is a general fear of dentists, and that the media and the movies have not helped, because they always depict the dentist as the guy holding that
The
needle
drill,
and,
yeah.
the drill and all that. But, we have replacements for the needle. There's the device called Numby, which actually uh, can numb a tooth with a little piece of plastic and not using a needle.
Hmm,
So there's a lot of technology, and the patients are a lot more comfortable in chair. And even the anesthetics that we used to use are so different. Today's anesthetics, it could get you completely numb. I never work on a patient that would have any pain. So patients must always be comfortable in the chair. Now, going back to the basics, it's very important, and that brushing and flossing, obviously, it's very important. And if you do it properly, you won't need any of these procedures. And something that I often see, and a question that I get, is about flossing. And they say, should we floss or not? And my answer to that is always, when you wash your car, you only wash the front and back of it and leave the sides alone. And the teeth have four sides. You can't just brush the outside and inside and leave the sides alone. That's where all the problems start occurring. So you definitely need to brush and floss. And, going to dentist with your regular checkups, hopefully the dentist can keep you away from all these, procedures
right.
that we're talking about. But in these days of corona and all that, it's very important not to have any infections in your mouth. Now, one of the things that we see, this virus, it gets you if your immune system is compromised. And guess what? People that have gum disease, people that have infections in their mouth that they're walking, and I see so many patients like that. The tooth doesn't hurt, but it has an infection.
Hmm,
People have gum disease because they're afraid the dentist, they don't take care of it. Your immune system is fighting those bacteria that are in your mouth. So that's compromising that immune system. The immune system is much weaker. So if you get something like this virus, there's less, immunity and,
Yeah,
cells to fight that
you definitely don't
disease.
want your immune system fighting two things at once, and especially two very
Exactly.
serious things at once. Correct.
Right.
It's and yeah, so and hey, see your regular doctor, and I guess the best way to bring this up would be, hey, you know your dentist says that you need a bridge and or you need a dental implant, and then you say, hey, have you ever heard of Ultratooth? Could you look into that for me and let me know if that's something that you could possibly do for me, something like that. Is that how a conversation would go ideally?
Absolutely. First of all, bridges, be very careful because, in this day and age, there's absolutely no reason to take a healthy tooth, grind it, and hang it into the tooth output, even though it's being done a lot.
Hmm.
And that's because probably the insurance will pay for the bridge and not pay for the implant. But you do not want to start that process of grinding your teeth, healthy teeth, where those are going to be problem 5 years, 10 years down the line. So when it comes to it, and then when the choice of implant comes, definitely have your dentist look into the Ultratooth because prior to taking that tooth out, because now the dentists are used to taking the teeth out, allowing everything to collapse, and then they start thinking about how we're going to replace it. No, at the time of extraction, taking that tooth out is the best time to place the Ultratooth, which saves all that gum and bone. So do advise your dentist to look into this procedure because it's a win-win situation for the dentist and the patient.
And it doesn't sound like it would really. And of course, you said that you have. You have dentists certified in this. You have some kind of seminar program that they attend, to get into this. But really, at the end of the day, it's still drilling. It's still implanting just a different kind of apparatus. This isn't so revolutionary that dentists are going to go, I have no idea how to do this, because it's still at the basic, at the base of it, it's still an implant.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when the socket is there, tooth socket, you just modify it with two drills and place this and expand it. So it's within the realm of dentistry. When we train dentists, we don't have to train them from scratch. Basically, it's a 2-day seminar that they go through, and then we monitor the next 5 to 10 cases to make sure that they know how to handle different situations. But every dentist can very easily be trained, and now we have actually the entire training process on the computer. They can take the course on the computer, for a day, and then they'll have the live didactic, where a doctor is going to actually show them the drills and everything on the computer. They don't have to fly to come to Encino. But usually, what happens is when they do a few procedures, they want more training, so we give them advanced training.
I gotcha.
So
No, it's and of course, doctor, this has been very, very informative. And honestly, I'm glad that you could make it on the show, because this is, as I said, we're normally we talk about cell phones and we talk about that, and again, the closest we come to dentistry is what is Oral B or Sonicare? What are they doing nowadays? But this has been very this has been from like the other side. This is the more extreme side than just a toothbrush. And at the same time, it's been very interesting, and I'm sure that our audience enjoyed it. And I want to thank you so. Actually, before we do that, I want you to have the last word. Is there anything that we didn't touch on, anything that we didn't cover, you feel that we should probably talk about?
no, that was a very good interview. Thank you. Our message is for everyone to go to their dentist and actually let them know about the Ultratooth.
Perfect.
So thank you.
Yeah, and of course, if people want to find more information, we'll have a link to your website in the show notes. Is that the best place to go for more information?
It's sargondental.com. That would be my website, and ultratooth.com would be the website of the company that trains and the dentist, and they can find out who does this procedure in their area.
All right, and we'll go ahead and put that in the show notes as well, right there. And hey, people will be able to find that real easy. And once again, everyone, we have been talking to Dr. Sargon Lazarof. He is he's of course a cosmetic dentist and the founder of the Sargon Dental Implant Institute and the inventor of the Ultratooth. So once again, hey, thank you so much. This has been a real this is better than any dentist trip I've ever been to. So you made that really painless. And let's just go ahead and say that we're going to finish up the show with computer and technology news, but we're going to say good day to you. And hey, we hope you stay safe out there. Have a good one. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right. Have a good one. All right,
You
everyone.
too.
And yeah, and we're going to go ahead and do that. So perfect. Everyone, hey, that was our guest. We hope that you enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun to to kind of talk to him about. And like I said, it's not something that we normally do to talk to a dentist, but hey, the Ultratooth, something very, very innovative. So let's go ahead and continue on here with computer and technology news, and that is brought to you by Computer America. 1 second. Wait, wrong one. Correct one. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple of these, and I'm trying to keep these as coronavirus agnostic as possible, but I hate to say it, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all you're going to get in today's day and age. So let's start with this one. This is potentially a little bit on the scarier side, but that's okay. Coming to us from TechCrunch, and honestly, it's pretty interesting. Lawmakers and actually, the title of the article, TechCrunch, Zach Whitaker. Saudi spies tracked phones using flaws the FCC failed to fix for years. And yeah, I'm actually interested to find out what the problem with this is with the SS7 is apparently what's causing this. But here we go. Lawmakers and security experts have long warned of security flaws. And, so long warned of security flaws in the underbelly of the World Cell Network. Now, a whistleblower says that the Saudi government is exploiting those flaws to track its citizens across the United States as part of a systematic surveillance campaign. And when you think about that, what good does surveillance of Saudi nationals in the US have? And obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is spy versus spy. If you can say that, hey, this Saudi national, they are there to work a job, go to school, that kind of thing, and you can track them and say, oh, they're on campus, so they're doing their thing, they're okay. Then you could look for something, probably a little bit more abnormal. And that would be, hey, they went into the Pentagon. They went into government facilities often. Then you could say, hey, this Saudi national could potentially, be up to something that we don't approve of. So that's an obvious tactic. The other one would just be leverage and just knowing, what they're doing, who they're seeing, and why they're going there. So they say that it's the latest tactic by the Saudi kingdom to spy on its citizen overseas. The kingdom has faced accusations of powerful mobile spyware to hack into phones of dissidents and activists to monitor their activities, including, of course, the Jamal Khashoggi case. And they said that the kingdom also allegedly planted spies at Twitter to surveil critics of the regime. As with most critical regime out there, be it Saudi Arabia, be it China, be it North Korea, they want to have monitoring over all communications at all times. So where does the tech part of this come in? The report says that the location tracking requests were made by the Saudis' 3 largest cell carriers, believed to be at the behest of the Saudi government by exploiting weaknesses in SS7. And we're going to talk about what SS7 is here in just a moment. But yeah, that's how they have been surveilling their citizens for the past 4 months since the beginning of November. Now, Signaling System 7 is a set of protocols akin to a private network used by carriers around the world to route and direct calls and messages between networks. They say that it's the reason why a T-Mobile customer can call an AT&T phone or text a friend on Verizon, even when they're in another country. But experts say that the weakness in the system have allowed attackers with access to the carriers. Almost always governments or the carriers themselves to listen into calls and read text messages. SS7 also allows carriers to track the location of devices to just a few hundred feet in densely populated cities by making a Provide Subscriber Information Request, PSI. They said that these PSI requests are typically to ensure that the call user is being billed correctly, such as if they're roaming in another carrier or roaming with another carrier or in another country. Obviously, being able to build correctly, saying that, hey, if you're in the US and Canada, that's okay. If you're in parts of Mexico or even in Europe, then hey, you should be charged a different rate. That's what they're saying. And that's why these requests exist in the first place. They said that the requests made in bulk and excess can indicate location tracking surveillance. They said that despite years of warnings and numerous reports of attacks exploiting the system, the largest US carriers have done little to ensure that foreign spies cannot abuse their networks for surveillance. So, yeah, and let's go over that again just real quick, just to solidify that in my mind. Akin to a private network used by carriers around the world to route and direct calls between other networks. They said that the weakness in the system have allowed attackers with access to the carriers to listen into calls and text messages. So I guess it's an underlying system. The signaling system 7 is a set of protocols. It's that underlying system that allows, if it were just carrier to carrier, same carrier to same carrier, you would never need to be rerouted through the signaling system 7. But if you're roaming, if you're in a different country, if, like they said, you're an AT&T user and someone else is a Verizon customer, then, hey, this is where that system would come into play. And then by utilizing the PSI, which is, again, requesting the location information of the person sending the message, you can then track location on top of intercepting this signaling system 7 routing that is happening. So that's how they're getting not just the messages, but also the location of these users. It's not even like metadata, because metadata, I'm sure that it pulls from the same source, but it's almost like requesting parts of the metadata, and then they can compile it and then do what they want with it. So, of course, they said that in 2016, Representative Ted Lieu, who is a freshman congressman, gave a security researcher permission to hack his phone, and, well, they exploited SS7 for that, and that was on an episode of CBS 60 Minutes. There you go. So obviously the FCC was not in the mood to deal with it. 2016, they had a whole full-blown investigation into it. 2017, nothing actually happened. And they also, they said that the same vulnerabilities were used a year later to drain the bank accounts of unsuspecting victims by intercepting and stealing the two-factor authentication codes necessary to log in sent by text. So now we're intercepting text messages of particular people to get into their bank accounts. So this has been going on for quite a while. 2018, they also reported that one of the major cell carriers, which was not named in the report, reported a breach of SS7 breach, of information involving customer data. So they said that it was in the process of updating its firewalls, but also warned that unstable and unfriendly nations with access to a cell carrier's SS7 systems could abuse the system. So there you go. Now, we have that it's a problem. It's been a problem. How do we fix it? And that's where the end of the article, kind of leads us in saying that it's not an overnight job. But without a regulator pushing for change, the carriers are not inclined to budge. Experts say that those same firewalls put in place by cell carriers can filter potentially malicious traffic and prevent some abuse, but an FCC working group tasked with understanding the risk posed by the SS7 flaws acknowledged that the vast majority of SS7 traffic is legitimate. So what happens there is that they're looking at all the traffic and looking at the text messages, the phone calls, the task force, and they're saying that, hey, by and large, this is all on the up and up. It's not like SS7 is strictly used for spying by Saudi Arabia and China. But the potential is there, and it has been utilized before, and the fact that it's not been fixed is itself a problem. They said that carriers need to be measured as they implement solutions in order to avoid collateral network impacts, saying that it's not a feasible solution if it blocks real carrier requests. So you can't just take down the whole system or monitor all traffic using SS7 if it's going to impede the networks themselves in what they do. So there you go. Cell carriers have been less than forthcoming with their plans to fix SS7. And let's see, so they also mentioned that AT&T was the only one to comment to The Guardian, saying that it had security controls to block location tracking messages from roaming partners. So what that really means, who the heck knows? End-to-end encryption. End-to-end encrypted apps like Signal and WhatsApp have made it harder for spies to snoop on calls and messages, but it's not a panacea. As they mentioned, SS7 remains a fixture underpinning the very code of every cell network. Tracking location data will remain fair game. So even if you send that encrypted text message using Signal or WhatsApp, that doesn't really solve everything because they can still get your location data. They can't read the message itself, but they can see if you are having a phone conversation. They can determine what kind of data is being sent, if it's photos, videos, just text messages based on the size. And then from there, they can get the location of the person just by using as I said before, a PSI request. All that comes together, and hey, it means that we are still fighting with this particular problem. And really, those are the worst because the longer that they exist, the longer that the longer that they sit out on the open market without a fix, the longer the bad guys have to utilize this, and the longer that they get to utilize this and really work it into their systems, and hey, it looks like it's not going to be fixed anytime soon. So there you go. Let's go ahead and continue on here. And I think our next story, this one is a little bit near and dear to my heart because, well, yeah, Star Trek Voyager. It was what I grew up on. I know that a lot of people, grew up on Enterprise or the original Star Trek. Or what everyone has like their favorite Star Trek, and I gotta say Voyager was ours because I explicitly remember that our parents sent us to bed at like 10, and Star Trek Voyager didn't air until like 10:30 or something like that, and we stayed up every single, it was like a Tuesday or like a Wednesday, and we would stay up and watch this past our bedtime. And we had to be very careful so that our parents wouldn't come in and turn off the TV and yell at us. Not yell, but, lecture us. But hey, we had to get our Voyager fix. So, with that being said, Star Trek Voyager is unlikely to ever get an official high-resolution remaster. Maybe. The effects were shot on video rather than added to film after the fact, making it much harder to upgrade the quality than it was for the next generation. However, an unofficial project might be getting relatively close. Series fan Billy Reichard has started processing Voyager with a machine learning program that updates that 90s era image quality as much as possible, which already looks, and they have a video clip here that we're not going to play, but it looks really, really sharp. You won't forget that the show was made for tube TVs given the aspect ratio, but the AI is surprisingly effective. It produces something you probably wouldn't mind watching on an idle afternoon if you're a Star Trek devotee. The effort is time-consuming at about 6 hours for an episode, and necessary software is both expensive and tricky to work with. Voyager had variable frame rates that made audio sync a pain, as you can see in the sample clip, which we'll include a link to this article in the show notes. But it could be a long, long time before you see Janeway and crew in 4K glory. Still, they hope that they give every single episode the AI treatment. So, obviously, CBS is probably not going to sanction it, and it's a fan project, but yeah, it's something that I never really considered. That, a lot of things shot on film, those can be pretty easily updated to a higher frame rate, a different resolution, pretty easy to update those. But things shot strictly on video, much, much harder. And that's interesting. So there you go. let's go ahead and continue on here, and let's see. So I think our next story, and we have time for like one or two more story. Okay, so, and really, I shouldn't have this. Okay, so obviously a lot of us are, kind of trapped in our homes, and hey, maybe this is going to be of particular interest to you because if you're a fan of video games and you have a lot of time on your hands suddenly, boy, you are in luck because man, oh man, so many great video games have been coming out. The new Doom Eternal looks amazing. There's a new, I think it's like Blade and Sword or something like that. Has just been released today, and looks like tomorrow, Modern Warfare 2 Remastered, which has already been out for quite a while. They said that, and this is again the remaster, not the original 2009 release, but that one is going on sale tomorrow. So if you're a fan of video games, this is just kind of my weak way to introduce the idea that, if you're into video games, it's a great time to get into them because a lot of them are going on sale. A lot of them are providing perks and, just kind of making it... A lot of video games are putting their best foot forward out there for people who are suddenly finding themselves with too much time on their hands by providing in-game perks and things like that and, boost power-ups. So, hey, play some video games. It's may not be the best for you physically, but maybe mentally, it could help you de-stress. So let's go ahead and continue on here. Let's talk about some hardware, and it's been a little while, but this one looks pretty interesting. Samsung, they have a 4K OLED, not TV, but Chromebook. A 4K OLED Chromebook arrives on April 6th for $1,000. There you go. Saying that it will be one of the cheapest OLED notebooks available, which is certainly the case. When you have an OLED panel built into a laptop, those usually run you $1,400 to $1,700, starting there, going up, of course. Very, very cost prohibitive, especially when it comes to 4K and OLED, not just one or the other. Now, it's finally set to arrive at Best Buy in the US April 6th, starting at about $1,000. And while $1,000 is a lot for a Chromebook, although we have seen Chromebooks that have, what do they call that line? Google had their own line. I think it was like the Pixel of Chromebooks that were like $1,400, $1,500, which I was not a fan of. But hey, it will be one of the cheapest OLED notebooks on the market. They said that the Galaxy will also be one of the more powerful Chromebooks out there with the 10th generation Intel Core i5 chip, along with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 SSD storage. It will also feature a S Pen stylus, a front-facing camera, and a second 8-megapixel camera mounted on the keyboard for use as a rear camera when the screen is flipped around in tablet mode. It's hard to see who would need a Chromebook like this, though it would make a great premium movie watching machine. And they're simply saying that because, hey, it's a 4K OLED screen. Maybe someone who just stares at the screen way too much would highly enjoy it. But there you go. It's, pretty interesting. And again, it's just, unfortunately, you just don't hear a lot about hardware in today's atmosphere. So it's pretty interesting. So with that being said, we have time for like one more quick story. And how about this one? Just real quick. John Fingus, definitely appreciate his writing for Engadget. And court finds algorithm bias studies don't violate U.S. anti-hacking law, saying that this could help detect discrimination in the websites you visit. And this happens for especially search engines, but of course, if they can, we already do this with every single website. They look at your cookies, they look at past websites that you've been to, they look at your search history. They have a whole system in place to really track who you are at your core and what you search for online to better serve you ads. Well, with all that being said, a lawsuit against Attorney General William Barr that studies aimed at detecting discrimination in online algorithms don't violate the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, saying that the government argued that the act made it illegal to violate a site's terms of service through some investigation methods. But hey, they said this is not a criminal case. So there you go. The internet, in many ways, it has been a wild, wild west kind of thing. And it's time to start really looking into what we accept as the norm and seeing if, hey, maybe we need to take a step back from the wild and crazy founding of the internet. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the Computer America Show. Check out the show notes for a link to our guest website. You can find all that and more, especially, hey, information about the Ultratooth. Definitely go check out that video. The video explained it so well. Of course, Dr. Sargon Lazarof explained it well in words, but to see it in action, to see it in video is something very, very telling. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning into the Computer America Show. I want to thank you so much. And hey, tune in tomorrow here on the program as we have on, I think we'll be doing computer and technology news. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great one. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.